Hey friends, today we're going to do the second part of our cactus.
So in our drawing, most of it is going to be super colorful. We're going to color our cactus, we're going to color our background, we're going to color our table. But our pot, I want to have some contrast. Contrast means being significantly different from something, or something that is super duper apart from each other. So colors. There are colors that are complementary, but it means that they're super far apart on the color wheel. So yellow and purple, red and green, orange and blue. They have a lot of contrast together. You can have contrast in size. A super teeny tiny person in front of a huge mountain. That's a big difference. Shapes. You can have a super pointy geometric shape in a field of circles. That pointy shape looks super different from all of the other organic shapes. Texture. You can have something fluffy in the middle of something super spiky. That is something that's very different from its surroundings. So another way to do contrast is to have very black and very white. This is an example of a cactus paper that I did at my other school, and I made my pot in super black and white patterns. I chose what parts of my pattern I wanted to color in with a Sharpie and what parts I wanted to leave white so that it looks very different from each other in my pattern. So that's what I want you guys to do. We're going to pick patterns that we can make very contrasted. Okay, so there'll be pieces that'll be super dark and pieces that are super light. And do you see how I separated them out into sections? So on your pot, you're going to decide whether you want to have sections going up and down, sections that go across and down, totally up to you. I think I'm going to do something like this because I think it looks really cool. Maybe I'll do some black and white stripes up here. And one of the most important things for this is to draw big. If you draw a pattern that's super teeny tiny, we're going to lose that contrast. We want to draw big shapes so that we have places where we have a lot of black next to a lot of white. That's what makes it very contrasty. So I'm going to continue to draw patterns that I know I can put really dark spaces and really light spaces. So I'm drawing very largely, and I'm doing sections of just shapes or just lines because that's easier for me to figure out where to put the light and the dark, but it is totally up to you. I did some diamonds, some wave lines, and now I'm doing some squares. And I'm starting to plan where the dark and light is going to be, so that when I trace it, I know exactly where I'm going to put my light and dark. And now it's time to trace. So now I've traced all of my lines, and now it's time to plan how I want to fill in this pattern so that it has a lot of contrast. What parts I'm going to fill in and what parts I'm going to leave white. So with my diamonds, do I want my diamonds black or do I want the space around them black? With my squares, same thing. Do the squares turn black or does the background turn black? I don't know yet, but I do know that these stripes I want to be filled in. So I'm going to take my Sharpie and fill them in. All right. And as you're doing this, if you notice that your Sharpie gets tired or starts looking gray, the ink isn't working as well, you can put the cap on it and go trade it out for a new one and give it a rest. Or you can just set it down and maybe do something else like starting to erase your lines so that Sharpie has a chance to rest. So then after I give it a chance to rest, it should be back to normal. Hey guys, today we are going to be coloring our cacti, and I wanted to tell you how we're going to do that with value. So value in art means how light or dark a hue is. Hue is a fancy word for color, so how light or dark a color is. When we are using it to color our drawings, it can be used to show shadows and highlights to make objects look 3D or round. You can do this by using lots of colors, so lots of the same type of color. Since we're doing our cacti, I decided to do green. So I have different types of green going from dark to light, and when you put them together, you get a value scale. You have colors going from dark, going up to light. You can also do this by using one color and applying different pressure. So I do have black, but I'm only using this one type of green. So I have black and green here, but I press really hard with my green, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, until I get over here where there's not a whole lot of color on my paper. So this also makes a value scale from dark to light. Now when we're doing this in a picture, you have to imagine that the sun is shining on your picture. So over here is my light source, or my sun, where the light is coming from. And it's hitting this side of the cactus. So this is where my highlights are. That's where the lightest colors are, where the light's coming from. On the other side is darkness, because the light is hitting the object here, and over here is shadows. So your colors are going to be darker. On my cactus, these three sections are used using one colored pencil, light pressure, medium pressure, really hard pressure. Then here I used a different color pencil, but the same technique. So this is medium pressure, this is really hard pressure. And it made a value scale on my cactus that made it look round. Also on my flower, I added value to the petals. And if you notice, that on these 4 petals, the light is coming from this side, so I have light on this side and shadow on that side. This one's a little different because my light is hitting the top of my petal, so my shadow is underneath it. But that's how you add value to your colors.
So in our picture, we are going to be using colored pencils to add color to our cacti. Like I said, you can use lots of different types of green or the same green. I'm going to start with this cacti. I'm going to use one light green and color very lightly all over the entire cacti, that big part at least in the beginning. Then I'm going to take this slightly different green, and I'm going to color on the side where my shadow is. So I chose my shadow to be on the right side. So I'm pressing a little bit harder on the edge, a little bit lighter towards the middle, so we have a nice blending of colors. So there's light on the left side and shadow on the right side. And you're going to do that for all of your cacti and for your dirt. So I'm going to put my light color there, my dark color there, so I can remember my sides, and I'm going to do that for my whole paper. Now we are done coloring our cacti and our dirt. We have the shadow on the right side and the light on the right side. We even did it for our dirt. We also need to do this for our pot. So we need a shadow on the right side of our pot. But since it's black and white, we want to use a black or another dark colored pencil. So you're coloring a little bit harder right on that edge, and you are blending it out. That means you are very carefully getting a little bit lighter each time you go farther away from that edge. There's also a shadow on the table because the light's hitting the pot and there's a shadow behind it. So you're going to color just a little teeny tiny bit underneath your pot and then all the way to the edge. So there's like a rectangle between your pot and the edge of the paper that you're going to fill in with that dark colored pencil to make it look like there is a shadow underneath and beside your pot. And color it in nice and neatly, about medium pressure. You don't want it super dark, but you do want it to show up and to show that it is a shadow. Then it is time for us to color our table. And we're going to do that with a peeled crayon with no paper on it. And you're going to rub the side of that crayon across the bottom of your paper. And what that does is it picks up the texture of the table underneath your paper, so it doesn't just look like a flat color, it looks like there is a texture on your table. And you're going to color that crayon over top of that shadow, and the shadow is going to stay, so it looks like there's a shadow on your table. Make sure your color's nice and even. There you go. Our last step is to paint our background. We're going to use watercolors. You have water cup, paintbrush, and paint. These paints only work when you use water, so make sure that your paint is nice and wet before you get started. I'm going to drip straight water onto that blue because I'm going to give my paper a blue sky, making sure that there's plenty of water in there before I get started. And you're just going to go straight onto your paper. You do still have to make sure that you're being careful to go around what you've drawn, but we used colored pencils so that the wax from the colored pencil protects from the water of the paint. Now, if you put paint on your paper and you don't like how dark it is, you can always put water on top of that paint on your paper, and it will help spread it out and lighten the color. So make sure you're going very carefully around your paper, and there you go. If you accidentally get some paint on the middle of your cacti, you can take a tissue and dab it up. But for the most part, you are finished. Great job.